Welcome to another PL Together Lounge Talk. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Athena. We make video-powered professional learning tools for teachers. Today, we're talking with Jim Knight. He's the author of multiple books, including the most recent one that I've got right here, The Definitive Guide to Instructional Coaching. And I'm realizing my video is off, so hopefully that wasn't blurry. But Jim, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So we were just talking about asking questions, the impact of the questions that coaches are asking teachers, and how that can lead to multiple different kinds of outcomes in the coaching conversation. So I'm curious to kind of talk with you about how coaches can get better at asking questions. It's one thing to hear you say, ask more real questions, ask deeper questions, make sure that you're creating the kind of generative questions. But if I'm a coach, how do I start practicing this and making sure I am getting better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So good job on the question. I learned this from Christian van Nuremberg. I think the first thing I'd say is that developing kind of a bank of your favorite questions and asking them and seeing what happens and sort of watching the process play out. To me, a good question is like intellectual fireworks. You ask the question and there's this explosion of ideas and cool things, beautiful things. And so over time, you develop these questions. So one of my favorite questions, it sounds a little goofy, but it comes from solution-focused coaching. And it's a question, if you woke up tomorrow and a miracle had happened and everything is going the way you wanted it to go with whatever this issue is, what would it look like? What would be the first thing you'd notice that was different? And then next follow-up question would be, what's something you do to take a tiny step towards that goal? So if you're working with the teacher on the classroom, you might say, what would the students be doing differently? And how would you know? And what's something you could do to move forward? So that kind of question, I've asked it many times. I usually preface it by saying, I know this is going to sound a little goofy, but let me ask this question. And then I've never had it not lead to something useful. And then John Campbell's question, what gives you the most energy when you're looking at a list of options, is another one of my favorite questions. And the scale questions, like on a scale of 1 to 10. And then a question I like is, would that really matter to you? And Susan Scott has quite a few great questions, but one of hers is, what if nothing happens? Is that okay? And that little question usually triggers things. And just a simple question like, what do you want, can be really helpful, or the sort of what's called the awe question. And what else? So you develop this list of favorite questions, and then it's kind of like what the literature on habits say is you become aware of the impact of your habits. So what's the trigger that leads you to ask the question? What's the routine you do? What's the reward for the question? And so if you become aware of what happens when you ask these questions, it's going to help you create a kind of questioning ritual as you do this whole thing. And the last thing I'd say is that probably the most powerful thing we found in terms of improving your skills is the way in which you video record your conversation. You go back and you see what you do. It's amazing what video will reveal, as you know better than anybody. And when you video record yourself in a coaching conversation, you go back and look, you go, wow, that went really well. Or you might go back and say, I really didn't ask the question. I just told them what to do. And so when you start to look at it, we did a thing with coaches in Beaverton, Oregon, and we worked for 3 years. If I'm not mistaken, we worked 3 weeks every year, a lot of days together. And at the end of the 3 years, I said to the coaches, all right, I said, we've spent all this time together, 3 years, 3 weeks every year. What's been most helpful? What's been the most valuable form of professional development? And they said to me, Jim, and sorry, it's not you, it's video. When we watched ourselves on video, that's when we began to develop our skills as coaches. So to me, video is pretty much the most efficient and most powerful way to get there pretty quickly.
This feels, I'm passionate about this next question I'm going to ask, but it feels important to, in a way, double click here. Because there's a lot of conversation out there about the use of video reflection with teachers. Look at what's happening inside classrooms and inside with students, between teachers and students. But what I hear you saying here is, video is good for adult learning, and coaches should be using that as part of their practice to continually increase their effectiveness.
We have a course coming up. We have this thing called Radical Learners, which is our online course website. And it's called Video is Rocket Fuel for Learning. That's the name of the course. We think video, there's a reason why every middle school football team in America is watching themselves on video. It's because it's powerful and you see things you wouldn't ordinarily see. Video, like data, makes the invisible visible. And whether it's, I even think husbands and wives or partners in relationships and committed relationships, they should be watching themselves on video to see what their conversations look like. And somebody might say, you really wanted me to sit down with my partner and watch the conversation on video? Well, your relationship with your partner is the most important thing in your life, or one of the most important things for sure. And isn't that at least as important as going to the gym or eating clean and, to strengthen that? And so to me, it's not necessarily a pleasant experience to watch yourself on video because it cuts through your defense mechanisms and perceptual errors. It kind of shows you out there transparently, but to get better, you have to know where you are, and you have to focus on the right things. And to me, video is the way to go for all that.
I'm not going to ask you, so have you used it in your own partnership?
Oh, well, we have, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you can volunteer then.
Well, it's been a while, and probably it would be a good thing to do, but when I wrote Better Conversations, there are all these forums in there for reflecting on the way you communicate. And Jenny and I tested them all out. So we would have all kinds of conversations. And then we haven't done it for a while, but we used to do these evening conversations where we'd reflect on how we communicate. And I would set up my iPad and she would set up her iPad. And then half the time, or maybe 75% of the time, we'd never look at the video. But if the conversation didn't seem right, we would go back and look at the video. And it got to the point where if we were having a conversation that seemed to be kind of going south, Jenny would say, I think I'm going to record this conversation. You're much nicer when we have the camera on than when you aren't. So it was a part of our relationship, though I have to say we haven't looked at it for a while, but I think it was really, really especially helpful to me because I just, I look grumpy a lot, and I don't feel grumpy, at least I don't think I do, or at least I thought I was disguising it. but video shows me that I have to work on smiling and being being more, I don't know what the word is, available and embracing and accepting,
It sounds like what you highlighted is that having the video, or the habit of recording the conversation, the habit of recording the practice, the habit of recording the whatever it is, allows you to go back in time if you want to analyze it, which is a different way of kind of positioning the value proposition of recording. Instead of saying, I'm going to go out and record so that I can analyze, it's this tool to be able to look back in time accurately on, in that story, it was between you and Jenny, but if you're a coach, between you and a teacher, you have that superpower essentially to rewind time and look again.
Well, it's rich data too. You get so much more from video than you do from memory, but even more than from audio. It just reveals a lot. And so I think you can record it a lot and then just go to it if you need to. So it's helpful to have it there available. You don't know if you need to look at it until you get into the conversation, but when it's over, you're like, well, I got to check that one out. So.
Well, maybe I'll be checking this one out later.
Okay.
And if the folks watching this want to check out what we talk about next, because we need to take a quick break, make sure you head to pltogether.org for the rest of this conversation, as well as many more. Thanks, Jim, for joining us as part of PL Together.
Thanks.